Hey my glam girls, welcome back to my channel. It's Chelsea, where we talk about all things glam and all things girly. So today we've got a beautiful looking eyeshadow palette to be reviewing today. This is the NATASHA DENONA Mini Xenon palette, and I definitely have this beautiful look that I've created. I think it's kind of cute, but I will definitely be sharing with you my thoughts on this particular palette, its formulation, whether or not I think you need it, and some recommendations for you based on this palette and other palettes that I think you could potentially get similar looks from it. So stay tuned for all of that. Thank you so much for taking some time and spending it with me today. I truly do appreciate it. And if you are new, I would really love for you to join the Glam Girl Squad and subscribe to my channel. And let's just get right into this video. So when I saw that NATASHA was coming out with another mini palette and this smoky goodness of a palette, I was like, yes. Give it to me. So we have, like I said, this is the Mini Xenon palette. You get 4 matte shades and 1 metallic shade, and it does retail for $25. So this is a palette that includes 5 shades and allows you to complete a whole look on the go. And it's the ultimate palette featuring 5 essential shades to create NATASHA DENONA's signature smoky cat eye. It includes creamy matte and a highly foiled metallic, perfect for bold and defined looks with a pop of dramatic glam. This is also the first and only mini palette to include the supremely rich and velvety Blackest Black eyeshadow. But first, looking at the outer packaging of the box, I really do like it. It's matte, and just I don't know, it's just something about this aesthetic that I really do like. And then with the actual palette itself, I just think the palette and the shades that she chose are just beautiful for this. It's smoky, it's cool toned, and I do think the majority of the shades in this particular mini palette will work for a really good amount of shades. So let's get into some swatches. So starting with Puff, NATASHA describes this as a off-white shade, and this shade is matte. Feels like it's one of her creamy matte formulations. Then we have the shade Mist. This is a light gray, creamy matte. The one and only metallic shade she calls Chromatic. This is described as a platinum silver. And that is just, I mean, I have to comment on this one, smooth as smooth can be. We have the shade called Gloom. This is described as a medium dark gray, and this is a creamy matte. And then lastly, the shade Blackest Black, and she describes this as a deep black shade. So here are all of the shades swatched, and I'm sure all of us are kind of wondering what happened with this matte shade. Because when you look at it in the pan, she's black. I mean, she's like deep, dark black, and you're expecting like deep, dark swatch black. Now, we all know swatches don't always indicate performance of the shadows on the eyes, so we are well aware of that. But I'm not gonna lie, this is not my first time swatching this palette, and I was like, oh yes, I went straight for the black, because I was like, this black is about to be it. And when I swatched it, I said, oh, what is this? Now on the hand, when you go to like just swatch it on your finger initially, you do get a lot of depth to it. But something that I noticed, and I don't know if it's just my palette or all of the palettes, but if you look up close, and I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it, there's a lot of texture in this black matte shade that we don't see in the rest of these matte shades. And even when I feel it, like I was putting my finger in it to swatch, it felt, that black shade felt gritty almost compared to the other 3 matte shades. They felt very creamy and very buttery. And I like I said, I don't know if it's just my palette or if it's the actual just formulation of the black shadow, but I'm not gonna lie, that threw me off. So getting into the eye look, I started out with the shade Mist right here, and I blended that all across my transition area and into the crease. And I think the shade blended quite nicely, and it also built up quite nicely. I liked that the shade can be built up to offer more intensity of its shade, and I really enjoyed the undertone of the shade Mist as well, because being that I have more of a warmer complexion, I didn't feel like the shade looked overly ashy, overly like white casty on the eye. I think it actually looked really nice as a transition shade, and it built up really nicely as well. So I was very happy with that. Then I went in with this gray shade called Gloom, and I wanted to concentrate that more in the crease and just all over the eyelid for the most part, about 3/4 of the eyelid. And I think that shade blended also very nicely as well. Now, what I was not sure of with these two shades, because I think they blended nicely, but I also felt like I had to work a little bit more with them because, you know, I would blend one side, then I felt like, okay, this side wasn't as blended as this side was. And so I don't know if it's my primer. And so I'll tell you what I use. I use the Lancome. This is the Prime It and Boosted All Day Shadow. So this is the eye primer that I did use. I've been using this eye primer for like a couple months now. And so I'm very familiar with how it works, and I usually don't have any problems with it when it comes to eyeshadows. So I do want to put that out there because I don't know if these two shades could have blended better with a different base. I also don't know if these two shades work better without a base. So I will keep you posted on that because I am going to do a follow-up video on this. But they did blend very nicely. I just felt like I had to work just a little bit, which when it comes to Natasha's Creamy Matte formula, I think we've all come to, well, I'll say this. I've come to accept that with her Creamy Mattes, I'm just gonna expect to work. And if I don't have to work, it's a bonus. But if I have to work, like I'm just gonna accept that, oh, all right, Creamy Matte formula, I'm gonna have to put a little bit of elbow grease into them. Are these Creamy Mattes as difficult as the Creamy Mattes in the Love palette? Absolutely not. They're so much better than that. But like I said, I just had to work a little bit, just a little bit, but not enough to where I was like, I'm disappointed and I'm like over the palette. So after I went in with there, I went on ahead and moved to the lower lash line, and I did lay down a black eyeliner in the waterline and the tight line, and I did use the Wayne Goss eye kohl in the shade black. And so then I went in with this Blackest Black shade, and I really wanted to smoke out the lower lash line. So what I did was I took a very fine angled brush, and then I used that to line the lower lash line, and then I went in and blended it out, and I felt like that worked very well. Now, I did not use, you know, the black shade all over the eye, but in blending that shade, I was like, this is a shade that if you want it to look like you want it to look, you're gonna have to work in phases. This black shade is not gonna be a shade that you're gonna just be able to plop on, blend it out, and you've got like intense black shadow that just looks like amazing. It will look amazing eventually, but you're gonna have to work in phases. You're gonna have to apply a little bit, blend that out, apply a little bit, and blend it out. And even though I only used a little bit on the lower lash line, I can already tell that that's how this shadow is going to work. And especially with looking at how it's swatched, it's not going to give you all the pigmentation that you need right off the back. And even if you go in and try to pack it on, that product is not going to move as best as it can move if you're trying to put a lot on and then blend from there. So with this black shade, I think this is a shade that will work best either using it in phases if you really want to smoke out like the whole lid, or using it in small amounts in concentrated areas, like how I used it on the lower lash line. I had no problem blending that out. It blended quite easily and quite well. But even when like I got out here, I noticed that it was just skipping a little bit, and I just, you know, kept blending and working with it. So I would say for this black shade, if you are going to have this palette, work in phases. If you wanted to, you know, deepen up the outer edge of the eye, work in phases. Put a little small amount, blend it in, small amount, blend it in, and then build up the intensity to your liking. That's how I have to use the Creamy Mattes in the Love palette. And once I figured that out, I ended up, I mean, that's like by far one of my favorite palettes from the brand. But this Blackest Black shade, I was expecting like Blackest Black depth, one swatch, full pigmentation. And at least with my palette, I'm not getting that. And then after the lower lash line, I went in with Chromatic, and oh my goodness, this metallic shade is stunning. So beautiful. I mean, like we're like getting full-blown like Natasha Denona pigmentation from her metallics, and I love it. I have just a little bit of fallout on the face, but not a lot. And I mean, I can't get over this chromatic shade. It's stunning. And then going in with this bone shade, it's so interesting because looking at the palette, I was like, I would have thought to put this off-white color in it because it is a little warm, just a little more warm in the intensity of it, but it works and it fits. So I used that to put on my brow bone, and I love how this look came out. I can't wait to use this palette to create more looks, and I'm definitely gonna bring you all some more looks with it because I personally want to play with it more. So overall, first of all, do I think this is worth it? Absolutely. It's $25. I think we get $25 worth of formulation. That's what I think. I think if this Blackest Black shade would have came out of the gate with the pigmentation and like the ease of blend as we assumed that we would get, or even if we just got the easier of blend as the other matte shades in this particular palette, then I would have been like, y'all, this is like a $50 palette that we're getting for a steal. I think for $25, we are getting our money's worth. And I also think for $25, we're still getting a really good palette. It's just not one of her best. And that's fine because at the same time, the majority of us, we're not going to reach for this every day. I know for me, this is going to be like one of those like special occasion palettes, you know, when I want just a dramatic smoky eye. For me, more than likely, that's going to be an evening event, and that's going to be even more of like a glam evening event. This is not going to be a palette that I'm going to reach for every day. I know some people like these types of shades more frequently, but the majority of us are not going to use this every day. So for that reason, if you are someone who doesn't mind spending a little bit of time with their eyeshadows, if they don't mind, you know, putting a little bit more elbow grease into it to get the look that you want, I'd so most definitely recommend this palette. And I think it's beautiful. I'm still very happy with the eye look that I was able to get. I'm still very excited about it. And I'm glad that I picked this one up because I think it is a beautiful one. Now, with that said, is this a need? And my answer is going to be no, it is not a need. And if you don't have anything like this and you want it, then I say definitely get it. If you have something like this and you still want it, absolutely get it. But if you are like, Chels, like I kind of have some other palettes, so do I really need this one if I have a couple of other palettes? So those are the palettes that I'm going to show you now that I think you can still get a similar look as this, but the formulation will be better. So first off, I have to talk about Natasha's Glam palette. Now, the Glam palette obviously is going to be different than this Xenon palette, and I'm hoping I'm saying that right. If I'm saying it wrong, I'm sorry. But looking at it, obviously the Glam palette is going to be more warm to neutral to cool tones. We've got more tan shades compared to this being like more black and gray. But if you are looking for a cool toned palette and you're like, you know, I want a cooler toned palette when I want to create those cool tone looks, but I want a really good formulation, you cannot beat the Glam palette. I think obviously also you'll get more versatility of looks. And although this palette does cost more than this palette, depending on, you know, what looks you might want, how often you might use this, this might be the better investment for you compared to this one. Another palette that I thought of that I thought would be a really good, not dupe, but I would say if you have this at home, you might not need this one. Or if you don't have this at home, but you're like, I want a really good black, check out Wayne Goss's Pearl Moonstone palette. So let me swatch his black and you'll see what I'm talking about. All right, so there is Wayne Goss's black. Here is Natasha's black. So right off the bat, you can see the intensity difference on my fingers. And then Wayne Goss's black, Natasha's black. Look at that. I mean, the swatch speaks for itself. And I thought from Natasha's palette, we were gonna get this type of like one swatch full pigmentation, but this is what we get. So if you're looking for a smooth, buttery, blendable black matte, and then you also want some different shades and like, you know, a palette that can give you maybe a little bit more versatile looks, I mean, check out Wayne Goss's Pearl Moonstone. Y'all know I love Wayne Goss anyway, and his products, you cannot beat the formulation of them. And I think this would definitely be worth your money over this one. Or if you have this one, granted the color scheme is not the same, but if you have this one and you're like, you know what, I have this one and I've got the grays and the black, I can, you know, maybe do without this one, then hey, you've kind of already have something at home already that has a better formulation. Or if you want both, you can still have both, but just know if I want a really good black that I don't have to do a lot of working to blend it, then you can reach for this one to get that black matte. And then the last palette that I thought of that I said, she's a beaut, the Biba palette. Now, obviously price difference, there's a very big disparity in price difference. So I'm recommending this palette more so if you already have it. So if you already have the Biba palette, once again, you're like, I'm looking at that black, I'm looking at the grays. Obviously this is more warm than this is going to be, but formulation wise, if that is of your concern and you're like, I really want something with a really great formula, then I think of Biba too. So I'm going to swatch the black matte in the Biba. And this is actually not, this is more of like a creamy matte. So I'm gonna put this one here. And look at that. Very smooth and buttery. I mean, you really can't beat just the effortless blend of the Biba palette. So we've got Biba, Xenon palette, and then Wayne Goss's black from his Pearl Moonstone. So if you're looking for something that has an amazing formulation that you can get smoky looks from, and like I said, not identical looks, but once again, these were the palettes that I thought of when I said, what are other palettes that have a great, like either black matte in them or a palette that can give me like cool tone and smoky looks. These were the three palettes that I thought of that I have that I would really recommend to you, that they are worth their price, even though they are more expensive, even though the price tag is higher than this particular palette is. We're getting more shades with the other palettes. We're also getting a better quality formulation from the other ones. But I really do love the other shades in this particular palette. So even if I didn't use this one, I still feel like I can get a lot of good use out of the other ones. So for me, I think this palette is worth having for me. I'm very happy to have it. And like I said, if you don't have something like this and you're like, you know what, for $25, I can work with it. Hey, pick it up. It's a really beautiful, unique looking palette. But if you have one of these other palettes at home, or you have another like smoky eyeshadow palette and you're like, the black in mine is better and I've got kind of those tones already, then I don't think this is a need. Unless you're just a fan of the brand and you just want to add to your collection. So that's it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video and I hope that you found it helpful. If you have any questions or other comparisons with this palette that I did not provide for you in this video, leave them down in the comment section below. And guys, if you've made it to this point in the video and you have yet to subscribe, I'd love for you to consider subscribing and joining the Glam Girl Squad. And guys, that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope to see you in my very next video. Bye, guys.